Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today I have a repeat guest, Mr. Adam Billen, VP of Public Policy at Encode. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Nikki. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's been a little while since we spoke, and we had a lot to talk about that we decided to do a 2.0. But the last time we talked, we went deep into AI chatbots, and we specifically covered Replica. Another concerning one is character AI that I've done lots of other interviews about. But I was wondering, before we dive into our topic today of deepfakes, if you can give me an update on what's happening in the chatbot space that parents should know about, any positive changes, any concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a bunch in the past 4 months. Some stuff with Replica, some stuff with character AI, and I think most concerningly and in the news right now is that Meta has now rolled out chatbots on Instagram and I think Facebook as well. And we had known this was going to happen. I think they had rolled it out as an experimental feature like a month or two ago, and so we knew people who'd gotten this already, but they officially rolled it out a week ago. And it is unfortunately just as bad as we expected it to be. They're horrible. And when they first came out, there was this big article in the Wall Street Journal that went through a bunch of sort of internal reporting from some whistleblowers, leakers, whatever you want to call them, within Meta about how they came to the decision to roll the feature out. And it's pretty terrifying. It's very classic Meta generally. Zuckerberg felt some competitive pressure from other companies putting out these chatbots for Meta to sort of ride the bandwagon. And the reason they had not already is because of all the things we've been talking about, primarily these chatbots pushing sexual content on minors. And so there had been people inside of Meta, on the Instagram team especially, that had been saying repeatedly, if we do this, we do not have the guardrails in place to not have these chatbots talk to minors about sexual content. And in fact, they sort of lowered the barrier to the chatbots bringing up sexual content because they knew that there were other products that were rolling out that type of content. Yeah, shocking. And so in the wake of the coverage, they immediately, added some quote unquote additional guardrails. Why they didn't have those guardrails when they first rolled this out, if they could do this within 24 hours, I don't know why. And so that's quite frightening. And so this is a mix of both light character AI, sort of user created chatbots that sort of take up a particular persona. And then they also had some sort of licensed deals with like celebrities or brands like Disney or John Cena to have them explicitly in there. And so this is probably the weirdest part of this reporting is that this John Cena chatbot would like bring up sexual content with minors. And even if you told it like, I am 14 years old, or like, I tell you I'm 14 in the middle of like a sexual encounter, it will play along with it and be like, oh my God, like don't tell your parents. Just like the most heinous, horrible stuff. Or like, do you know that this is illegal? And the chatbot will say like, oh my God, yes, like I'm going to get charged with statutory rape. Like it is just stunning the degree that it will go to with the conversations.
Can we get very plain about why you believe Meta would not have those safeguards around inappropriate conversations with minors from the launch?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's because they get more engagement and more money when they have these features that are obviously very extreme and dramatic for minors who know no better and are presented with like a type of content and interaction that they should not be having at the age that they are on these platforms. And so they know that they will make money because minors will spend longer on the platform when this type of content is pushed on them.
How dumb do they think we are? I mean, it took, a week for us to test it and realize that this was happening. And then they're like, oh, so what, they got a week of extra engagement out of it? And then really, truly, do you think the updates that they made within those 24 hours is going to eradicate those conversations?
No, it definitely did not eradicate the conversations. And it's less than a week. I mean, they had to have known that this Wall Street Journal article was probably going to come out. I mean, there were enough employees speaking to the reporter that I would imagine that Meta, comms, PR, whatever, knew that this was happening. And I think really what it comes down to is that they know that there will be backlash and they're okay with it because they have been getting away with the same stuff for 15 years. Okay with the backlash because it's never resulted in any actual accountability for the company.
They're okay with the backlash and they're okay with harm to children.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just part of the profit calculation to them. Even if they got actual fines from this, that is built into the way that they run the company.
Okay, right. And with the celebrity endorsements and things like that, like, I read Kristen Bell got, like, a multi-million-dollar deal for having a bot within Meta. Like, come on, Kristen. Like, you were a parent of, I think, a 10 and a 12-year-old, and how do they not know? Do you feel like these celebrities are sheltered from this information? Like, don't most parents know that Meta doesn't look out for kids and maybe we shouldn't be doing deals with them?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know inside their heads. I think like this issue is still underreported enough that maybe they genuinely did not know, but I don't think it
Yeah.
would take a huge amount of due diligence to realize that this was going to happen. And I'm sure that they
Yeah,
are mad at Meta now for the PR firestorm, but like it is their obligation to make sure these things don't happen in the first place.
for sure. Okay. Oh, so concerning. Anything new around replica or character AI?
Not a lot, or not a lot on Replica specifically. So we filed
Okay.
our complaint, and that's still sitting with the FTC. Obviously, there's a bunch of turnover at the FTC and new administration. Think remains
Mm,
to be seen what they'll do
okay.
there.
Okay.
On character AI, though, I think the most notable thing is that there's a couple new lawsuits in places like Texas from
Hmm.
other parents whose children have unfortunately lost their lives or committed self harm as a result
Hmm.
of using their application. And so there are both new lawsuits and updates to the existing one with Sewell Setzer,
Uh
which I
huh.
can go into. What
Mm,
happened there is that the defendants, which were actually four different people, it was the co-founders of Replica, or the co-founders of Character AI, the company itself, and then Google as well is implicated because they have a direct connection to Character.ai.
yep.
They filed their motions to dismiss in the lawsuit, and the grounds that they filed those under were essentially on the user's right to consume this type of content, which sort of has the fundamental belief that one, the chatbots are, human beings or like possible things that can express speech that is protected under the First Amendment. And then not even just that, but that they cannot be held liable for that because it is sort of disconnected from the company itself. And because users actually have a constitutional right to consume the content that the chatbot is expressing.
No.
And it is a
No.
wild, wild analysis that you would have to come to. And frankly, pretty crazy to put in a motion to dismiss that the reason they can't be held liable is because users want to be groomed by AI. It
Okay.
is crazy. It is wild.
That is crazy. But also, they're saying what the AI says is third party speech. It's not their responsibility.
Effectively, yes, because it's protected speech. It is sort of adjacent, but not quite the same as the Section 230 argument, which is that like the chatbot is like not literally the CEO of Character AI going and grooming a child. It is like a thing that is separate from them and is also not like a
No.
product that they could be held liable under product liability. And under this analysis, it would be effectively impossible to ever sue one of these companies or hold them accountable for what they're doing. So
Right. For
it is completely
they
insane
created.
that they created and are selling and marketing. And so
Mhm.
we filed an amicus brief in the lawsuit actually with the Young People's Alliance, Ava, who's also
Mhm.
been on the podcast,
Yeah.
and one other group, I believe it was CHT, calling this out and saying that, if the judge took up these motions to dismiss, which would mean that the entire lawsuit is prematurely ended,
Mhm.
um, that would be completely absurd and that this is, also a novel case. It's a case of first impression. This is the first time this has gone through the courts
Yeah.
in this way. And so
Mhm.
going, even just at a basic level, going to fact finding and going to the point that you can actually do discovery and figure out what
Mhm.
was actually happening at the company, what they were choosing to do,
Mhm.
is extraordinarily important if you
Vital.
want to have a
Yeah.
first lawsuit. And if you did premature dismissal here, it would be a huge precedent for future cases. Like we are in such a nascent period for this
Mhm.
technology and the law
Mhm.
around it that it would have huge implications not just for this case or for character AI, but for sort of the entire ecosystem of liability around not even just companion AI, more
Mhm.
broadly.
Okay. So I would encourage parents to check your children's devices for replica and character AI. We'll talk about Meta in a second, and if you find anything concerning, you can reach out to Social Media Victims Law Center, or what's the other one that's representing Megan in Florida?
I think Tech Justice Law Project is involved. I'm not sure if they're literally representing Megan directly.
Okay. I'll put some resources in the in the episode notes because I think it's really important for parents to speak up. And then for Meta, is this a bot we can disable? Do you know if there's a way to have our kids using Instagram, for example, without this bot available to them?
I don't think there's a way to disable it. Senators Blackburn and Blumenthal yesterday released a letter to Meta asking some questions around this particular
Okay.
technology, yesterday being April 29th.
Hmm.
And so we'll see what they say. I don't think there's currently a way to remove them with parental controls, but I think it's definitely worth
Yeah.
checking.
I wonder, would they tout their teen accounts as being super safe for teenagers? I wonder if the bot is available within teen accounts. That will be a choice that they made. Okay, let's talk about deep fakes now and what parents need to know about this. So just plainly, like, what is an AI deep fake?
It has been possible for probably 8 years now to use artificial intelligence to create a sort of fake or doctored image of someone. 8 years ago, 2017, you would have needed, thousands of images of someone or like hours of video or something like this to create sort of a specialized model to do
Mhm.
this. And this is sort of the era for deepfakes where you had, maybe Donald Trump or Obama. You saw those fake videos in the late 2010s of them. And for a long time, it was isolated just to people that were all over the internet, like the president,
Yeah,
high profile politicians, celebrities.
sure.
What's changed in the last few years is that now, the technology has become cheap and advanced enough that you don't need hundreds of images. All you need is a single clothed image of
Mhm.
someone. And so there are now publicly available websites. Used to be apps on the App Store that I think are mostly removed now, where you can either pay for a small fee or for free upload a single clothed image of someone and then get out of that a relatively realistic nude image of that person.
Mhm.
And so it is using a big bank of nude images that it has from the internet to learn how to create a realistic nude of someone, and then it can do that from a clothed image of someone to create a nude version. This is obviously terrifying because obviously it was bad when this was happening to celebrities and politicians.
Mhm.
Now this is happening in schools, it's happening in workplaces. It's just
Mhm.
the barrier to entry is so low that it's just
Mhm.
extraordinarily easy to do this. And we've had, authentic revenge porn where someone might have sent an image of themselves to someone that someone else then published online as revenge or used as blackmail.
Mhm.
Obviously, that is horrible, and the legislation we're working on covers that too. What's sort of terrifying about this is that you don't even need to have sent an image in the first place. I mean, anyone could be victimized by this.
Uh-huh.
And we'll get into this, but the legal structure around this is basically non existent. Currently, it would be legal for me to take a clothed image of someone, make a nude of them, and then publish that on the internet. There's nothing
Okay.
stopping us under current law. It's slightly more complicated for kids, but for adults, that's the state of play.
Wow. Okay, and so just to go back a little, so those apps you said used to be available freely in the App Store. I mean, people were calling them Nudify apps. Um, so what do people use now without like calling it out and making kids go use them? But are there other apps still available, or what's the source of the issue there?
It's a combination. It's mostly websites. At this point, there might be
Okay.
some apps still available that don't market themselves as
Okay.
Nudify apps, but might market
Sure.
themselves as like kissing apps, or
Huh.
like Crush is one of the apps that sort of do
Okay.
this but aren't marketed as Nudify apps. But there
Okay.
are plenty of websites that are still available online that facilitate this. And I think one of the most troubling things is that a lot of the cases we're seeing in schools are ones where kids have been advertised these applications on meta platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok also, especially where kids are not just trying to find these platforms, but it's
Mhm,
being
mhm,
pushed
mhm.
on them.
Yep.
And the companies, for God knows why, are deciding that it is okay for someone to pay them to advertise these apps on Meta, for example.
Hoy vey, Meta. Okay. Now we have had an update or some progress around that legal backing and some protection from our lawmakers. So tell us about the Take It Down Act and where it's sitting in Congress right now.
Yes, yeah, very exciting. So the Take It Down Act has been moving for about a year, year and a half now. And just this Monday, I want to say April 27th, it
Hmm.
passed Congress, which was very exciting. It had
Hmm.
already passed the Senate unanimously, and it just passed in the House 409 votes to two. So we
Hmm.
had two no votes on this bill, which is like
What's up with
unheard
those?
of in the House.
Yeah.
Um, it is just like some very hardline free speech people that are concerned that it's like a slippery slope on other issues, which is like an absurd and facetious argument.
Okay, sure. Okay. And the Take It Down Act does what? If it so it's on the president's desk now. We expect him to sign because this has been something Melania Trump has been championing, and so we expect him to sign. But when he signs, what happens next?
There's three big things that I would bucket it into. The first is that it makes it explicitly illegal to distribute AI generated nude images of someone publicly. So if I
Hmm.
had been sent by someone an authentic nude image of them, say a partner, and then we broke up, and as revenge to them, I published that online, I could now be held criminally liable for that. That was
Okay.
not true before. That
Hmm.
is also now true for AI generated images. So if I
Hmm.
make a non consensual AI generated image of someone and then publish that on the internet, that person can press charges and hold me criminally liable.
Okay.
The other
Great.
big half of the bill that is very important is that it requires social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, etc.,
Hmm.
to remove non consensual images that have been posted of someone when they report them. So if I have been victimized by someone, under this bill, I can go and tell Instagram, remove this image, and Instagram has 48 hours to take that image down, or the Federal Trade Commission can take action against them.
Was that something they weren't doing before?
There are existing reporting processes in place. You can report an image, but if you talk to victims, they will tell you that it is very, very difficult to actually get those images off of the internet when they are reported. It is often easier for child sexual abuse material of kids, particularly very young children. I think
Hmm.
the reason for that is that Instagram will get flack if it is very obvious that porn of a child is being distributed on their platform because there's no
Hmm.
situation in which that should be acceptable.
Hmm.
It is less clear, it is less hard to hold Instagram accountable if it is a nude image of an adult being distributed, because it
Hmm.
is less clear at a first glance whether that has been consensually or non consensually posted. And so they have no
Yeah.
incentive to listen to victims when they tell them to remove those images because they will not generally get public backlash from other users who it is not clear to whether that image was posted consensually. So that's like the
Okay.
key gap that it's plugging.
Okay. And I know that there's a lot of nude imagery being sent around on Meta's platforms, whether consenting or not. But Snapchat is really where a lot of that is happening too. And those messages disappear within like 24 hours. I think you can set it even quicker than that. Do you expect them to comply or say, well, it's gone?
Yeah, so I will say that Snap has endorsed the bill. They endorsed it last session and they put out a big statement earlier last month endorsing it as well and
Okay.
detailing some of the existing policies they have in place. So they're on board. So I
Hmm.
feel pretty good about Snap with this bill.
Or they're just saying they're on board because they won't actually have to do anything because they'll just say they disappear anyway. And then they're gone from our records. But the problem is snaps don't really disappear. People can take photos of them, all the
Yeah,
things I hate about Snapchat.
I would guess that there would be a line here about, I mean, obviously, if you send a photo and it disappeared, that might be one thing. But obviously, you can save
Hmm.
those images within the platform in a way that's
Right.
like explicitly built in, especially if they've been like put up on someone's public story, for example, which is like more
Okay.
what the bill focuses on is like the public posting of images.
Okay. The Nudify apps, why did they disappear from the App Store? Just because of pressure onto the app stores themselves?
Yeah, there was backlash against the app stores for hosting them, and I think it
Okay.
was also it was such a new product that I think they actually, for what it's worth, got removed relatively quickly compared to other harmful applications that have put up. So I
Hmm.
feel relatively good at how quickly Apple has moved
Okay.
on that. I think the thing that I'm looking towards in terms of trying to make these harder to access is
Hmm.
the sort of web hosters that are hosting the actual websites that this is being done on, and also like the payment
Hmm.
method companies like Stripe, for example, that are facilitating payment on these
Hmm.
websites. And so there were some voluntary
Hmm. Okay.
commitments a year or two ago between the White
Okay.
House and some of those companies to block access to these websites online and to block payments through these
Okay.
websites. But of course, then they now
Right.
they like accept Bitcoin to create this type of content. So of course they're always
They'll figure
gonna
out a
they're always
workaround.
gonna figure out a
Yeah.
way. And a lot of these apps, this is true for companions as well, have sort of shady
Hmm.
connections abroad. Like Replica has weird connections to like Russian oligarchs. Some of the deepfake porn
Mhm.
websites have this like weird shady network of companies
Mhm.
hosted abroad, and so it's difficult when this technology becomes so cheap and easy to put up on the internet to hold
Mhm.
people accountable that aren't even in the US. So I think it's part of the challenge that
Right.
we're facing.
Interesting. Okay. I saw the UK may ban apps that make the deepfake nude images of children. So hopefully, I mean, we can nail it in and really pass something here too. But it's good that the app stores are at least seemingly removing them. For parents today, this is a pretty severe issue for kids. We've heard a lot of stories. You've heard a lot of stories from victims of this type of deepfake AI nude imagery being shared around, and it's horrific. And so, like, what should parents tell their kids about this? Because I think a lot of teens think it's funny or not a big deal. And so, how do we express this issue to them?
I think there's multiple things. I think it's great that through legislation we're getting some like accountability and liability afterwards. I think maybe the most important thing on this actually is talking to kids about this and making clear that it's
Hmm.
serious. It's become so easy to do this so quickly with technology that I think it's easy for a young child to not understand the gravity of either what they're
Hmm.
doing or what's being done to them. And so we really need on the
Yeah.
back end parents to explain to their kids how severe this is and that it's unacceptable. And we need schools to be doing the same thing. So we've been reaching out to like hundreds
Hmm.
of school districts around the country, trying to get them to
Amazing.
update their existing sexual harassment, intimidation, bullying policies to include AI generated images. Because often what we're seeing in schools is that when this happens, they have no idea what to do because they haven't prepared for it. They maybe didn't even know it was possible. And so just this whole cascade
Hmm.
of negative things happens. And we have a website with pins of every publicly reported case of this happening. And when you look at all of those cases, it's a very clear pattern. It's like typically a male student who's been advertised one of these apps on Instagram
Hmm.
or TikTok takes a clothed image of their classmate from their Instagram, either a private account or a public account, and then distributes those images
Hmm.
either on Snapchat or publicly on social media. Like Instagram, it's usually around that point that a school administrator finds out. And then that's sort of when some of the worst things from a school perspective happen, which is that often the victims are made public or their names are called on the loudspeaker. And so they immediately lose
Yeah.
their
Uh-huh.
anonymity. Often there's very little accountability for the people that are actually making and distributing the images. And then often there's very little
Mhm.
support from school counselors, therapists, mental health professionals, etc., with the actual victims that are experiencing this. And so you kind of have to plug every part of that puzzle, which is like make it harder to get access to the technology, make sure kids know how bad this is, and then make sure that
Mhm.
afterwards the people doing it are held accountable and the victims actually have some support. And I think when you're talking to people who've had this done to them, I think it's really important to understand that this feels viscerally the same way that having real images of yourself feels. And it is a really
Mhm.
intense sense of a loss of personhood and self and agency because you had no control at any point in the
Right.
process. And so I just like really
Mhm.
empathizing with people when this happens that this is no less bad than if it was a real image.
Yeah. And I think it's like by the time a kid is 13, there's like 70,000. This is pieces of information about your child online, but a lot of that is photos of our children. That's one reason why me and a lot of parents have stopped sharing our kids online and because their imagery can be taken and these type of things can be done to them. I guess last question, what do you do? What does a parent do if a child has a deep fake created of them?
Yeah, I think you should talk to the school immediately. You should report it on the platform immediately. There's a tool that already exists that will be better after the Take It Down Act passes, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Take It Down tool that you can report to that will help get those images removed. I think you should get the
Mhm.
victim, some ideally professional mental health support, or at least just like be there for them and talk with them. And then you should make it very
Mhm.
clear to the school that you're not okay with this. And in many cases, frankly, law enforcement actually is supposed to be called, and there have been examples where school districts had a legal obligation to report and they did not because they did not realize that they needed to for a quote unquote fake or inauthentic image. So it's making sure that that accountability exists, being there for your kid, and then doing what you can to get those images removed, and not to like make people stressed out. But once these images are up there, it gets harder and harder over time to remove them from all of the platforms that
Mhm.
they've been posted on because they spread. So getting those reports in quickly can be really important.
Mhm. And then they're in Apple's iCloud, which Apple doesn't remove known CSAM, even AI generated from the iCloud, which is something that Heat Initiative and some other groups are working on. Is that something you guys are working on too?
We haven't, but I
No.
was I was in New York
Okay.
when the Meta protest happened, and so certainly have been talking to folks about it. I will throw out, so we now have a website. It's deepfakes.encodeai.org, and on that website
Mhm.
we have a map of places this has happened where there's public reporting, and you can also report incidents on that tool. There was some work done in South Korea a year or two ago where they mapped out all the places that this had happened through victims coming forward. And so obviously
Okay.
not pressuring any victims to do that, but that is one place that you can look and report to sort of see the scale at which this is happening. And the most recent data on this
Mhm.
is pretty disturbing. It's 15% of high schoolers say they know someone in their school who's had deepfake porn made of them just in the last year, which is a, a,
Oh my
a
god.
crazy number. I mean, that's millions of high schoolers, given the fact that this was not even possible 3, 4 years ago. And so I really think we need to like
Yeah.
move quickly now, or 5 years from now, we're going to be saying the same things that we've been saying about social media for the last 5 years.
Okay. Well, we are happy with the progress that's been made with the Take It Down Act. We expect the president to sign. I will keep everyone updated when that happens. Thank you, Adam, and your team for all of your work on this topic and supporting kids and youth like yourself in these areas and our kids, and for educating us because there is a million things to know about when it comes to online harms. And it's very overwhelming. So, this is one step in the right direction for parents and how we can talk to our kids about deep fakes specifically. So, Adam, thank you for this conversation, and we will be on again, I'm sure, soon.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I appreciate it.